Hey everyone, I hope you're having a great day. So I've been wanting to film this video for a while. It's obviously a hugely private topic for me. So please, all I ask is just be kind. I am very nervous about filming this video, but now feels like the right time. And there are a few different reasons as to why I am finally sitting down to do this video. The first one and the main one is that I really want to find closure for myself. This episode, this experience happened 5 years ago exactly now. Or at least 5 years ago I was going through this, and I still struggle to talk about it. I still struggle to talk about it to the people that were involved in it, and there are lots and lots of parts of this time of my life that I've completely blocked out from my memory. And I have some notes here to keep me on track, and so I can remember everything that I want to talk about, because this was a hugely difficult time for me, and to cope with it as a coping mechanism, I blocked out a lot of this in my mind. So I had to sit down and really go through everything that I went through to try and remember to be able to do this video. And even just sitting down and going through everything really brought up a lot again, a lot that I've been trying to hide from myself, and I don't want to do that anymore. I feel that this is the time that I'm ready to acknowledge everything that happened, accept that it's a part of me, it's who I am, it's made me into the version of myself that I am right now, and make peace with that and be able to move on to my future. So that's the main reason. I really just want to find closure. Another reason is that when I was going through this, I felt so incredibly alone, and I had no idea how to navigate it. And by no means in this video am I providing a step-by-step guide or anything like that. Exactly the opposite, actually. Please don't do anything that I did in this video. I am not a medical professional. I am not a professional of any manner. This is just me sharing my story with you. But I know there's people out there who have experienced similar things in the past, are currently going through them, or may experience similar things in the future. And to you, I just want to say you're not alone, and things honestly do get better. And if there's one thing that you can take away from this story, it's that things really do get better, and that you're only in the darkness for a certain amount of time, and you will get out of it. And the final small reason that I want to make this video, and it's not that I'm making it for other people, but I feel that I owe certain people an explanation, and it doesn't necessarily feel right to sit down and have a chat with them about this now. It seems a bit weird to do so 5 years later, but I think there's a lot of people that kind of are owed this explanation, and maybe it will provide them some sort of closure as well, because it wasn't just me that this episode affected. So hopefully this video in some way can do that as well. Okay, so let's get into it all. This episode that I'm talking about happened over about a 6-month period when I was in year 12 in 2015. And it all really started basically 2 weeks into year 12. So for my whole life, since I was 8, I had been swimming competitively. Swimming was everything. It was my identity. It was who I was. It was my greatest love, my greatest passion. It really just was my absolute foundation and core. I lived, breathed swimming. It was incredible. And going into year 12, I had imagined that I would go into a sports path, like a sports physio or a sports psychologist, something where I could involve my love and also help people, because they're two things that I really wanted to do. I was adamant about having a job that I was really passionate about, and a job where I could help people as well. So ever since I started my school career, I suppose, I had wanted to be a captain of some sort, a sports captain more specifically. And then as soon as I entered year 8 in high school, I just looked up to and admired the swimming captains, and that's all I wanted to be throughout my school career. I just wanted to be a swimming captain and to be able to be a great role model for the younger students as they were to me, to be able to help them, to be able to show them what hard work and dedication looks like and what it can do for you. And I just wanted to be able to influence the next generation of younger swimmers. So for the next 5 years, that's all I wanted out of my sports side of my education. I just wanted to enter year 12 as swimming captain. And thankfully I did. It was so good. I was so excited and I was so ready to, be captain, live this little dream that I've had. And normally at the school I went to, for each sport, we would have 2 captains per sport. But because of the voting system and people's preferences and that kind of thing, I ended up being the only swimming captain, which honestly I was totally fine with. I still got to do what I really wanted to do, but it meant that I had double the workload, and it just put a little bit extra stress on me. And I kind of also already wanted to be like the best swimming captain I could be, so I added more and more pressure on myself to be the best. And the thing you need to know about the swimming season at school for me was that it was right at the beginning of the year. So we would have our school inter-house carnival about 4 or so weeks in, I think, to the first term of the school year. And then the really big swimming competition between schools was about 6 or 7 weeks into that term. So really from the get-go, I needed to be on top of things, be the best captain, and I was just thrown in the deep end straight away, which I loved. I was cool with it. But as well as that, I also had to manage my school subjects, and one of them involved going on a camp where we would be doing a lot of physical testing about 2 weeks, I think, into the school year. And right before we went on this camp, I contracted glandular fever. And it was a mild version, but I definitely was pretty sick. But I came back from that camp and I was still really, really sick. And I was also trying to juggle my schoolwork. I was training a little bit with swimming. And so I was trying to also juggle this captaincy at the same time. Anyway, flash forward to the week of the school swimming carnival. And I remember it so clearly. My swimming coordinator, the dean of sport, the dean of school, sat me down about 3 days out of the swimming carnival and said, "Look, Lauren, you're too sick to swim." And I kind of, all my walls went up. I was just in this denial mode, and I spent the next half an hour arguing with them as to why that was ridiculous, why I had to do this, how could I be a swimming captain that didn't swim. Finally, they kind of got through to me and said, "Look, Lauren, you can still be an incredible swimming captain from poolside. The younger girls will still look up to you. That's not going to change if you don't swim." And by this point, I was bawling because, as I said, this was everything to me at this time. And I was already so stressed and sick and tired, and I hadn't been able to train much because of the sickness, and it was just all coming to a head, and I was just crying in front of these teachers. All in all, they convinced me not to swim, and I was absolutely devastated, but I knew that they weren't going to let me swim, so I may as well just throw my hands up and just concede. So then I didn't swim at the swimming carnival. And there's one more really important factor that you need to know about all of this. Since I was 11, I had been struggling with scoliosis and other back-related injuries. My back would flare up a ridiculous amount. It was just so frustrating. I would have this great few weeks of training, and then something would flare up my back, and then I would be out of the pool for a week or 2 weeks, and I would hardly make any progress, and it was just so frustrating. Anyway, my sickness was subsiding a bit, and I was getting a bit better, and I was looking forward to this really big annual swimming carnival against the other schools. I had my eyes on that. That was my focus. And my sickness was getting better, and everything was actually like looking up for this. And then my back flared up again, and I was just devastated. But there was no way that I wasn't going to swim at this massive event. So I just pushed through, and that was that. I was not going to have it any other way. I decided I wanted to make like a swimming spirit video that I could play for the girls before we all got on a bus to go out to the event. So I was, the days before this meet, I was working so hard. I was working all through lunches, and every spare second that I had where I wasn't working on my actual year 12 work, I was working on this video. I wanted it to be the best damn video ever. I put so much pressure on myself, as usual, to get it done. The night before the meet, I was up super late editing, and then my mum and I were also up late making all these little goodie bags for 100+ girls. Then the day finally came, and then I showed them the video, and it was so well received, and I was really, really happy with it. All my effort and hard work had paid off, at least in my eyes. I really liked it. And so on the night, nothing really eventful happened. I had an okay swim. I came third in my main event, but overall, I had a really fun night. All the girls really enjoyed it, and the school did pretty well. So overall, it was a success, and I was happy and I was proud of myself. But unfortunately, this is where the story kind of takes a complete nosedive. After all of this stress and worry and pressure, self-imposed pressure and everything, I was bound to crumble in some sort of way. You know, you can't keep working at a certain extreme level without consequences. And here are mine. So my back was still really, really troubling me. And instead of the glandular fever totally going away, it came back with an absolute vengeance. I got so sick. And on top of that, I also got chronic fatigue. So I was not in a good shape here at all. And this is where PANS comes into play. So PANS stands for Paediatric Acute-Onset Neuropsychiatric Syndrome. And it's thought to have a variety of possible causes, but the main one being the brain's inflammatory response to an infection. And so my infection was glandular fever, and a very, very bad case of it at that. And here's the thing about PANS. It's called acute onset syndrome for a reason, because one day you're perfectly normal, you're perfectly fine, and the next you're just in this downward spiral of complete despair and just horrible, horrible pit. So my PANS symptoms consisted of depression, severe personality change, anxiety, extreme aggression, self-harm tendencies, eating disordered tendencies, and OCD. And when I was writing this video, I was trying to recall as to why I actually quit swimming. Like, what was the reason that made me quit? What reasoning did I give everyone? And I asked my parents, because I had blocked so much of this experience from my mind because it was just so awful. But they said that they've never known. I never really gave a reason as to why I gave up my passion, my love, my whole world. I had no reason. And just today, when I was making the notes for this video, I realized why. I had the realization that I quit because that's what this condition did to me. I wasn't of a sane mind when I was making the decision. I wasn't me. It was totally out of my control. It wasn't my decision. It wasn't me making this decision. It was this psychiatric condition that I was suffering from that made me give it up. And at this point, it hadn't fully pulled me under into the darkness yet. There was still a bit of me in there. And so I remember thinking so strongly, I'm not quitting. I just need to take a break because I have glandular fever, chronic fatigue. My back is in agony, and I'm trying to deal with, just getting through year 12. So I said that I'll get through. I need to just get back on top of things, get back on track. And then I'll go back because I love it. But I still remember even today that there was this tiny voice in my head saying, no, you won't. You won't go back. And I didn't. There are so many different avenues I could go down with this story, but I have no need to go into every little tiny detail of what happened over the next 6 months for me. But when I lost swimming, I completely lost myself. For my whole life, when someone asked me, who am I, what do, I would say, I swim. I'm a swimmer. I love swimming. That's what I do. But who the hell was I now? The next 6 months was spent with me breaking every single part of myself down, tearing myself apart, not on purpose, completely subconsciously. I didn't want to do it, but again, it was this condition that was just fully taking over me. One of the first things that happened was that I went into a complete downward spiral of depression. With the sickness and the chronic fatigue, I had to spend a lot of time, resting and recovering, and I just didn't end up getting out of bed. I remember there were days where I would just eat a bag of popcorn, and that's all that I would eat. I would just snack on that in the day. I remember there were nights when, and this is like embarrassing to say, but I remember I would be sitting at this desk with my computer, watching at 3 a.m. on a school night, episodes of Honey Boo Boo. For no reason, I was just, for some reason, obsessed with these episodes on YouTube, and I would just watch them. I couldn't tear myself away. And so I would go to school and 3 hours of sleep for weeks on end. And then I remember there was, I think it must have been first term holidays. We had 2 weeks off. I spent those 2 weeks completely in bed. I was just depressed. I didn't get up at all. And I think term 2 was when things really, really, really went downhill for me. My parents and some of my teachers were worried about my mental health and well-being, which rightly so. So they advised that I see one of the school psychologists, which after a lot of protesting, I did. Flash forward across the next 6 months or so, she became an absolute crutch and honestly savior in all this, because I was just able to go to her and talk about all the things that I was feeling and thinking. And I don't know, talking to someone really, really helped. Someone outside of my family, someone who didn't really know me. That was a tremendous help. But as I said, she became a crutch, and I was seeing her multiple times a week, sometimes multiple times a day. This isn't advised, but at this point I was so deep in my hole that, they let it happen because it was my way of coping. I also, because I was just feeling so lost, I had no idea who I was anymore. Everything I was feeling was just on the inside. I obviously wasn't really exercising at all. So going from, almost 10 years of rigorous exercise twice a day, 4 hours a day, to nothing, I had all of this pent up energy and thoughts and everything just swimming around in my head, and I couldn't get them out. I needed to feel something physical. So my new favorite activity to do was grabbing a pair of scissors and just scratching the tops of my arms and tops of my forearms. Never with the intention to go any further than that, but I just needed some sort of relief. And I knew there was always a part of me kind of holding on in there thinking, this is wrong, I need help, this is wrong. But there was just an overriding voice in my head that would shut that down, would smother it. And it did the job. It helped me feel physical pain and relieved some of the horrible pent up negativity inside of me. Obviously, as well, this kind of behavior is a cry for help. And I didn't want to, first of all, acknowledge that there was a problem and that it was this bad. I was embarrassed. So this was kind of also a way for me to get other people to start the conversation with me rather than me having to go to them and open up. I wanted someone to ask me if I was okay and if I needed help, and for them to initiate the conversation. Obviously, my parents realized and they would try and talk to me, but they didn't understand why I gave up swimming, and neither did I. But for that, they were the last people that I wanted to talk to. They didn't understand what I was going through, and I couldn't open up to them about anything else, or I felt that I couldn't. Obviously I could have, but in that, I just felt like I couldn't. But yeah, other people around me at school and some people that I knew at swimming, because I did start to go, after those 2 weeks in bed over the school holidays, I started to go back to where I swam, to use the gym there, to try and maintain fitness, because ultimately I loved sport, and I wanted to try and get some control back in my life. But even the people there, when I saw them, I don't think they just didn't know what to say. They didn't know what was going on. I don't really know, honestly. In essence, that technique didn't particularly work as a cry for help. And I still had that's the thing with these self-harm tendencies. They're not a solution at all. And I don't even know if you'd classify them as a band-aid. They're a pretty terrible band-aid. But, soon enough that wasn't enough. And couple that with that not working as a cry for help, I then needed to take it to another level. I still didn't ever want to take it to the very extreme, but I needed to kick it up a notch. And so I remember I would hit myself here and give myself not a black eye, but there was definitely purple, green bruising here and here. And that worked with attention, especially from the psychologist. She was rightly so quite alarmed by this recent behavior. And my school formal was coming up. And so she said to me, we need to get you to stop hitting yourself. What can we do? And so we worked out a plan together that on my knuckles, I would write something that I could look at when I felt the urge to punch myself. And that was the word formal across my knuckles, because I didn't want to have a black eye or anything for my formal. And that worked. So I stopped that behavior, which was really good. But then, of course, that kind of triggered another behavior, especially in relation to my formal, which was in terms of eating. And prior to this PANS episode, I had never been one to restrict eating, count calories, really care about food portions in any way. The only thing that I cared about was that I was putting good food into my body. But that all went out the window, and I started restricting my food because I wanted to look good for formal. So I made this little rule, or had this game for myself, that every time mum served up dinner, I was only allowed to eat half of what was on my plate. And every few nights or so I would say, "Oh mum, I'm not super hungry, can I have a smaller portion?" But still I was only allowed to eat half of that. Obviously I did lose some weight, nothing to the extreme, but this was not a healthy behavior at all. And thankfully I started this behavior with not too much time before the formal, before things could get super, super bad. But this, again, it was not good. And my parents were obviously realizing what was happening, and they sat me down all of the time. But again, I just didn't feel like I could talk to them. And I remember the night of my formal, I was feeling really good. I was feeling like myself again. I was really happy, all dressed up, wearing something that was so me. And that was the first time in months that I'd felt like the old Lauren again. And I remember my mum saying to my formal date, "Make sure she eats her dinner, make sure she eats." But he didn't even have to worry about it at all, because I gobbled my dinner up and it was great, and I didn't feel remorseful or bad for it at all. As I said, that night I just felt like me, and it was great. But of course, that didn't last for too long, because none of that wasn't a solution to the problem. You know, getting dressed up wasn't what was going to fix me, what was going to heal me. After my formal, and again, the timeline here is fuzzy because I simply can't remember some things. But I remember there was a period after my formal where I stopped exercising for a good few weeks, like the longest I've gone in ever, really. And I wanted to knuckle down on my studies, and I was also sick of restricting my food. So I went the opposite way, and I remember every afternoon I would buy a large iced chocolate, sometimes like this big kind of sandwich thing, toasted sandwich thing. And you know those little charity boxes of like Freddos or whatever that normally sports organizations sell to people, and it raises money and all that kind of stuff. I would go and buy, kid you not, like 6 of these chocolates, sit down to study for the afternoon, and just pig out. I remember so well always having to unbutton my skirt when I sat down, because I was just suddenly gaining quite a bit of weight. And I didn't want anyone to know how much I was eating in the afternoons. So that night I would ask for a normal dinner. So I would be basically, like, between lunch and dinner, I would be having another full meal. And yeah, I gained weight and I didn't do any exercise, and so of course that's going to happen. But yeah, I was basically engaging in all of these self-destructive behaviors because I didn't like not being a swimmer. It wasn't even that I didn't like the person that I was, I just didn't like not being a swimmer. And of course, with all these like tendencies that I was having, I did not like the person I had become. But it all started with not being a swimmer anymore. And on top of that, I had no idea who I was. One of the biggest struggles that I had throughout all of this was dealing with the humiliation that I was feeling. I am naturally a very shy and reserved person. I don't, unless people need to know or I want them to know, I don't want people to know when I'm struggling. And this was my biggest and most embarrassing struggle ever. And I also just didn't know how to even start a conversation about what I was feeling, because it wasn't just like one thing, it was all of these things. And I feel like if I started talking to someone about it, I would just explode. So I completely self-isolated myself from everyone. In this process, I lost all of my friends. The friends that I'd had for the past 4 years, I lost them all, because I would find a way to keep myself busy at morning tea for 20 minutes. At lunchtime, I would go to the library and eat my lunch in there and, you know, do work or whatever I was doing. I probably was doing work, but I wasn't socializing with my friends. I wasn't sitting at a table. They hardly saw me at all. And I would meet them at class later and they'd say, "Where were you?" And I was like, "Oh, I had to finish something in the library. Oh, I had to go see this teacher," or whatever. Like, just constantly lying because I was mortified with the person that I had become. And with this, there were a lot of things that I could control. Like, if I didn't want to talk to people or tell them what was going on, I could go somewhere else and isolate myself. But there were also occasions that I couldn't control, and that they were really, really difficult. Like with our end of term exams, especially for the year 12s, they're a huge deal, and the teachers all know how much pressure the students put on themselves. And so they always look out for our health and well-being, which is really great, and I'm so appreciative for it. And for me, they obviously saw I was struggling. They knew I was seeing the psychologist frequently. And so they granted me some extra time with my exams. And there's a group in every year, there's a group of a few students who just meet the requirements for getting some extra time for a variety of different reasons. And so I was allotted with them for my exam, so we were all sitting in a different room. The main reason that I got this allotted time was because A, they knew I wasn't really sleeping, and I was just mentally, I was really struggling. And B, one of my pan symptoms was OCD, and so I was really struggling to everything had to be perfect. So I was really struggling to get through an exam in a timely manner or get through an assignment in a timely manner. And so I granted permission for the extra time. But obviously, my former friends and classmates saw that I wasn't in the classroom with them, and I would come out of the other classroom with extra time, and so they would wonder why, like, that doesn't seem fair. Why does she get more time? And they would ask me, and I would just say, I would try and brush it off and play it cool and just say, oh, you know, like, I have OCD and whatever, like, sometimes it just takes me a bit more time. I'm a perfectionist, you know, and I just laugh it off. But I could see how pissed they were, and rightly so. I'm A, lying to them, and B, it's not a good excuse what I was giving them. It's not a good enough reason to get extra time, especially in the year 12 exams. But I was humiliated, I was mortified, I was embarrassed. I didn't want to tell them what was really going on, and because they weren't really my friends anymore, I didn't trust them. So I just continued to isolate myself. But now we're getting to the part of the story where things start to turn around for me. So after my term 3 exams, so it's around September-ish, we also have to submit our applications to universities that we are applying for. And one of the big complications that came when I stopped swimming was that I kind of reconsidered pursuing a career in sport. I didn't really want to be a sports physio or sports psychologist anymore. It just didn't feel right for some reason. So not only was I struggling with my own identity with I wasn't a swimmer anymore, but I also now didn't have any idea of what I wanted to do. And I was really stressing out with term 3 exams. And obviously now it was coming up that I would have to pick what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, basically. And I considered going and just applying for physio, psychology, or just an arts degree. I was really considering that, but nothing felt good, nothing felt right. I was still really struggling mentally. And then I remember this so clearly. I remember flipping through the course program guide with all the universities, Australian universities in it, and all of the possible courses at each university that we could choose from. And I remember flipping to a university that I'd never considered before and just reading through what they had to offer. And I remember in the back of my mind, I just had the word something fun, something that I'm going to enjoy, something that is going to make me happy. And then I saw Bachelor of Film and Screen Media Production. And I'd never done film, I'd never considered it. I actually really don't enjoy movies. I know that sounds weird, but I don't know, I'm not a movie watcher. But for some reason, as soon as I saw those words, that phrase, something inside of me just clicked. I can't even describe it. It's just like that last piece of the puzzle, or maybe it's that first piece of the puzzle to rebuilding myself. And you know, I have nothing else to break down. I'm not breaking myself down anymore. Now I'm healing, and this is the first step towards it. It's honestly, it's what it felt like. And immediately I just felt this wave of peace and happiness. I remember going to one of my closest friends and saying, like from swimming, and saying, I know what I'm gonna do. I know what I'm gonna do. And I was just beaming. And, you know, I still had scars and scratches, fresh scratches on me. And the day before I was struggling mentally, but now I was beaming and I said, I'm going to do film. Oh, I just felt so good. And like I said earlier on, it's called acute-onset syndrome for a reason. But what I didn't realize is that when I fix whatever mindset, whatever neurological issue I was having, that it would go away so quickly as well. Again, I was talking to my mum about it, and she said, your personality just came back. It was you again. It wasn't this aggressive, depressed Lauren. It was her smiling, happy daughter again. I was back. As soon as I had made that decision that I was doing film, you know, I had found some semblance of myself again. I was getting my identity back. It might not have been the identity that I had in the past or that I thought I wanted or needed, but it felt right and it was me. And holy crap, it was so good. And so the glandular fever had been gone for a few months now, And now the pants was subsiding as well. I was feeling happier and brighter and more positive than I had in so long. But obviously this experience hadn't just affected me, it had affected so many people around me. And those things weren't necessarily fixed when I came back into my normal self, or I stepped into this new version of myself. Other things were not the same as before. I had lost all of my school friends. My grades were terrible. My parents were still tiptoeing around me and still looking at me like I was half insane. I was the heaviest I'd ever been, and I still had a fair few months of school to go. And that was really difficult for me. I was climbing out of this hole, still trying to come to terms with what the past 6 months were, and then also trying to get my grades up and get back into exercise and eating well and sleeping. And I did, but you know, I couldn't mend those friendships. And ultimately at the end of high school, I was just so ready to leave because I had all these horrible memories from there now. Like a huge part of school is the friendships, and I just didn't have those anymore. So I was just ready to go to university. I fully and completely believe that everything happens for a reason, and this experience is no different. If I hadn't gone through this, I mean, who knows where I would be right now. But I definitely would not have gone to that university. I definitely would not have done that degree. And I would probably instead be doing a degree that I wasn't really that passionate about and felt I should do rather than I actually wanted to do. And I would pursue that more mundane path of working for money rather than fulfillment. And it's not just my degree that would be different. On the first day of uni, I met Louie. Half of our classes were together. And for that, I am so grateful for this experience. I would do it all over again to have what I have with Louie, truly. And after my first year of uni, I decided I wanted to do this channel. I decided I wanted to do Cave Girl. And without this, not even the degree, just being in this creative world, I don't think I ever would have felt inspired enough to do this, or the push, or just felt capable enough to start this channel in the way that I really wanted to. There are obviously so many other things that have come from this decision, but ultimately suffering through the worst 6 months of my life has led to the happiest 3 years of my life with Louie. And that's, you know, Louie and Cave Girl aren't the only good things that came from this, but even if they were, thank you, pants. I still look back on these events and really struggle to fathom that I did any of those things, struggle to fathom that the person that I'd become. But I remember so vividly what it was like to cut myself, to punch myself in the face, to stuff chocolate into my mouth. I think it's taken me so long to even want to just accept this part of my life, because I've always known that I did do these things. I remember what it was like to make that decision. And even though it was somewhat out of my control, it was still me. It may not be the version that I am today, or the version of myself that I want to be or hope to be in the future, but it was still me. And as hard as it is, I need to accept this part of my life, not be embarrassed by it, not be humiliated of it, because it has greatly contributed to not only the life that I currently have, but to the person that I have become. Okay, so that wraps up this video. Thank you so much for watching if you're still here. I hope that you never have to go through anything that I've gone through in this video. But if you have in the past, if you're currently struggling, or if in the future you do, please, as I said at the beginning of this video, just know that you are so not alone, and that you are worthy of getting help. You are worthy of having your feelings heard. You are worthy of love and support, and you are worthy of this life. Things get easier no matter how dark and how pitch black that pit might feel. Things get better, and everything happens for a reason. Everything. I hope you know that I love and appreciate you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I cannot wait to see you in the next video. I upload new videos every Thursday, and if you'd like to follow me on Instagram, feel free. It's at Lauren__hog. Thank you so much for watching. I love you. Bye.